Good evening and welcome to Estuary TV News. I'm Hugh Riches. Tonight I have with me Tony Bramley for the review of this week's newspapers. Tony, many thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
What have you found? What's caught your eye?
Well, the first thing I've picked out is from the Grimsby Telegraph, and it's a really charming human interest story. It concerns an 11-year-old boy called Jack Cosgrave, who's from Hertfordshire. And he won a competition about what he wanted to be in the future, what his career aspirations were. And he wants to be a professional fisherman. So they managed to arrange to come to Grimsby, and the story is about his trip to Grimsby, his visit to the fish docks, time on the Ross Tiger, and I think it's a charming throwback in a sense to find a young man who's got an interest in an industry which many people think has died in a sense, but he's clearly got a very strong feeling that this is what he wants to do despite being landlocked, you know, hundreds of miles away. So
well,
it's a charming thing, I think, in many ways.
I mean, no doubt there are many seafarers from Hertfordshire, but it's possibly a slightly frustrating ambition for him because the British fishing fleet and the Grimsby fishing fleet is not what it was.
Yeah, but it's interesting. There's a quote here from his father which says, "We wrote to a few different ports, but if you want to be a fisherman, there really is only one place you can come, and that's Grimsby." And I thought, well, there you go. Even in the nation's mind, despite what you say, they're looking and thinking, well, fishing, it's Grimsby, and therefore they still have that very strong association between the town and the industry. And I just think it was unusual when people want to be IT consultants or, I don't know, pilots or whatever they are, space people, and here somebody wants to be in the fishing industry.
It is, but it's in the same category as spacemen and train drivers, isn't it? To be a fisherman, it's a proper old-fashioned, manly, skilled,
hard job,
and adventurous and a little bit dangerous job. It's much more dashing than being an IT expert.
I think so, yes. And there's a lovely picture of him in the wheelhouse of the Ross Tiger, you know, with all the kit there, and it's a proper hands-on job, which perhaps nowadays not so many people would perhaps consider as a career, but I think it's smashing that there's somebody thinking like that.
You never had any ambitions to go to sea, Tony?
Well, my stomach, I don't think would allow me to do that. I'm okay on the water, but I don't think I did actually have a friend who fished in the North Sea out of Aberdeen, and the tales he told put me off the thought of ever doing it. I'm not a landlubber in that sense.
I have a great friend who will never stop talking about his 2 weeks on the Dogger Bank.
Goodness me.
That was as long as his fishing career lasted. 2 weeks before the mast. Anyway, what else have you got here?
Well, in the same paper, complete contrast, we've got a story about whether or not Grimsby is UKIP's best chance for Nigel Farage.
Yes.
Now, obviously, we've had the story, I think, earlier this week with Nigel deciding not to stand at in the by-election in Newark.
Yes.
There is some conjecture here, dismissed as a joke, quote, by, I think, Austin Mitchell, that Grimsby might be a good location for Mr Farage in the future. But I think it's interesting as we start to feel the effect of the 2015 run into the election. Just starts to ripple through, doesn't it? We've got the local elections, the European elections coming along. You really get the sense that the main parties are starting to ramp up, and these sorts of stories, some of which will be spurious, are just starting to pep people's interest, and people are thinking, well, would it be a good thing for Grimsby or not? You know, whatever your politics happen to be.
I mean, Grimsby is going to be a swing seat. It's very likely to be a swing seat, and a crucial one.
Yeah.
Austin Mitchell won it only with a majority of 714, I think, something like that. No more than 800 anyway, last time round. It having traditionally been such a safe Labour seat.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's unlikely to be taken from Labour by the Tories, but a party like UKIP seems to be attracting the white working class, and Grimsby is nothing if not the homeland of the white working class.
But I mean, things have moved on since the last election, but I suspect, like last time, the issue for the Conservatives fighting a seat like Grimsby is the extent to which their vote is diluted by voters going to UKIP. Now, UKIP are arguing, I think, this week that it's not just one-way traffic between the Conservatives and the UKIP. They're also saying that, in fact, they're detecting Labour voters moving across. So that may change the dynamics. But otherwise, I think, you know, it's probably, on balance, you think it would probably work in the favour of Labour if the opposition vote is split in a seat such as Grimsby.
Assuming that UKIP splits the
assuming that it does split the vote.
There was a nice piece in the Times this week saying that the reason that Austin Mitchell and Grimsby got on so well together was because neither of them wanted to be told what to do.
Yes.
Both were extremely awkward by nature, and they weren't obedient or followers of particular groups. And that sort of cussedness of Grimsby would need to be reflected by its new MP as well. And perhaps Farage has that sort of grit in the oyster quality that Grimsby likes.
It'll make the choice for, I think, the Labour candidate in particular, who'll probably enter the contest, I would have thought, as a favourite. I would guess so.
Yeah.
Make the selection of that by the local party very interesting choice to be made about, as you rightly say, what sort of character of person you know, apart from the politics, what sort of character person would fit the mould for the people of Grimsby?
We're not really looking for the slick metropolitan Westminster insider here, are we?
I suspect not. And I know there's a debate about the potential for an all-women shortlist, for example, which I think is, you know, has some people for and against that as an idea. And again, I wonder how that will play with the electorate in Grimsby as well, whether or not they'll feel comfortable with that sort of approach.
Well, quite. High politics in Grimsby. Now, I think you have some sport.
I do. Of course, today we're following the semi-final playoff for the conference, coming out of the conference and into the Football League Division 2, with Grimsby Town drawing last night at home to Gateshead in front of a fairly big crowd, as I understand it. And following the disappointment of last year, clearly I think Grimsby Town fans, and I hope the town as a whole, will be rooting for them in the return leg on, I think it's Sunday, and that they do a good job in Gateshead and get themselves through to the conference final playoff at Wembley, and really overcome the disappointment of last year's defeat.
So a draw is a good thing for Mariners.
I think so. I mean, I wasn't at the match, and I listened to a little bit on Radio Humberside, and the report suggested that you got off to a slow start, and that really Gateshead were really quite dominant in the first 20 minutes or so. But certainly as the match went on, Grimsby came into it more and more, and there are some reports suggesting they perhaps will be a bit disappointed having a draw. But I think the slate's clean at this stage. It's another match. You know, the scores are level. There's everything to play for up at Gateshead, and you know, one hopes for the town, one hopes for the club that they make a success of it.
And just explain for a non-statistician like me that if it wins in the return match, if Grimsby wins in the return match, then they have achieved promotion.
Yeah. Well, no, they don't. They will then go forward to the final, so the playoff final. This is the semi-final, effectively. They'll meet the winner of the other final down at Wembley. So a big day out for Grimsby Town fans and people of North East Lincolnshire to support the team down at Wembley if they get through Gateshead on Sunday.
They've been out of league football for a while now, haven't they?
They have, and they always say the best thing to do is bounce straight back, but that can be easier said than done. You look at some of the teams that are down in the conference now. There's some big league names down. I mean, Luton, for example, you know, once at the top of the professional football league, they've had a very good season this year, but they've been out and struggling for many years. So it's a difficult thing to achieve, and I think you have to grasp every opportunity, and we can only wish them, I think, all the best.
Good luck to them. The tidal surge last winter, we're still living with the consequences of that.
Yes, there is a story which I'll have to try and hunt down. It's about the green energy factory on Immingham Docks, which was very badly affected by the surge, which was back in December last year. I mean, many people may have forgotten about it now, but it had a dramatic impact on the company. I can't see it in front of me at the moment, but the story is that when the tidal surge took place down at Immingham Docks, it was very badly affected, unlike the docks in Grimsby, and knocked out quite a lot of electrical equipment, and they've effectively been disabled ever since that date, and it's taken them 5 months to get the factory back up and running. It's a very important factory for the local economy, and not just in the jobs it provides, but I understand it's the largest producer of biodiesel from sort of waste oils and waste products, possibly in Europe, possibly wider than that. So, it's quite an iconic thing, and I think they've worked very hard to get the thing back on stream, and it just shows that, the world moves on, and we've all forgotten about the tidal surge early December 2013, but goodness me, these people have been working on it for 5 months, and they're still at it.
But I mean, that work has clearly succeeded, although it's a surprise that it has taken so long. I mean, it's almost half a year since.
Well, as I understand it, I've not seen it firsthand, but reading the reports, I mean, the damage was very extensive, and I think the actual quote in the papers, they had some of their equipment under 7 feet of water.
They built this place in the wrong place, didn't they?
Well, they built it near the coast because there are advantages to do that. But I think it begs the question about how you protect that sort of equipment in the future. I think that there are. It's a sort of question the Environment Agency always asks, do you put high risk installations in those sorts of positions? And I think that's a long-term question about when you reinvest, do you do it so that you in some way proof it more against the possibility of that sort of risk? But you're right, as long as it's there, it's potentially very vulnerable because it sits right on the estuary.
Talking of heavy equipment, aeroplanes.
Yes, there's a story in the papers as well this week about good news for Humberside Airport, which is the expansion of tourist destinations in 2015. And I think Humberside seems to have come in and out of favour in the sense of what it's got available to offer. and there's always that. It just, for me, I always get that sense it hasn't quite got the critical mass to somehow get across the line in the way that somehow Robin Hood seems to have done, even though it's a newer installation. And just one always hopes every time there's an announcement about a new route or set of routes, you think, oh, I hope that's the beginning of it really becoming a very vibrant airport. I'm not saying it isn't a success, because I think obviously the helicopter operations and the expansion of those have been great, but the recent demise of the service to Copenhagen after quite a short period of time just tells you that it hasn't quite got it yet.
The middle east of England, as it were, the sort of halfway up the east coast of England, it's quite rich in airports. It's got Doncaster, Robin Hood, as you say. It's got East Midlands Airport itself, Humberside, Leeds Airport, and only 2.5 hours away by train is Manchester Airport.
Yes,
it's quite a lot of competition.
There is, but I think there's. I mean, I've used Humberside on a number of occasions. I mean, it's so easy, it's so easy to park there. You just walk a few yards to the terminal. There are no queues. Very, very relaxed place to take off and land back at. None of this, very expensive parking or parking miles from where you're going to leave.
Humberside's a perfect.
It's fantastic, and I used to live in Norfolk, and Norwich was a very similar sort of airport, and it is about gaining that critical mass. I don't know enough about the sort of passenger statistics, but again, with the Humber, with Siemens, with the whole talk about renewables, you would just hope that there would be the business demand, and on the back of that, hopefully the sort of tourist and casual demand for more routes.
Humberside always reminds me of old Pathé newsreel footage of Croydon Aerodrome. Yeah. It's got that wonderful, very old-fashioned, very personal service feel to it. You almost expect the customs official to put a chalk X on your briefcase as you go through. Yeah. And it's absolutely wonderful. But it does raise a question, the whole of the cheap flight matters, that Ryanair or Jet Extra or the orange one, what's that called? EasyJet.
Yeah, EasyJet.
That for £20 or £30 I can fly to the Mediterranean or to a European capital from Humberside, which is a £3 bus ride from my front door. £20 or £30 I can be in Warsaw or Rome. It's about 80 quid for me to take a train to London. So why is it that we've got to, when we're trying to fix environmentally friendly installations like those on Immingham docks, that we have a railway pricing structure which is so inefficient and so much more expensive than flying at 300 miles an hour at 30,000 feet in a metal tube above the earth?
Well, I think I don't know. I'm not a great transport expert, but I suspect it's to do with sort of the historic infrastructure investment cost that the railway's underinvested in for many, many years. Now that investment is coming in, somebody's got to pay for it, and the government's been very clear. The government may pay for it up front, but ultimately it's the passengers who pay for it in the ticket prices. Airlines are a slightly different kettle of fish, though, because there's less of that infrastructure cost. The main running cost of people, fuel, and obviously the aircraft themselves, many of which are leased. And again, of course, you defray your costs not up and down one line like Cleethorpes down to London. You could defray your costs across Europe, across the rest of the world in a sense. So it's not just the traffic you're generating out of Humberside, it's what you're picking up from places in Europe and elsewhere. So I think that the pricing model is very, very different. But having said that, the demand on both, I mean, even notwithstanding ticket prices on trains have never been fuller, have they?
No.
So there is a demand there for it. It's just a sad fact, you're picking up 50 or 60 years worth of underinvestment in that infrastructure.
And we're increasingly mobile.
Yeah, people want to move.
Let's talk finally about the glamorous film industry.
Oh yes, now there's a couple of stories.
Very, very quickly.
Yes, a couple of stories in here about two films. One of which has been made, which is called Pleasure Island, a small film made last year, which is going to be shown at the Cannes Film Festival. So it's a story filmed in Grimsby about. And
the second one, Tony, sorry to rush you.
No, the second one is the film called Grimsby, which is about Grimsby, which is the Sacha Baron Cohen film, which has been backed by Sony.
No, but Sacha Baron Cohen, let's hope he's gentle with us.
Absolutely.
Tony Bramley, thank you very much. That's all from us. If you have any stories, please email news@estuary.tv or contact us via our Twitter or Facebook pages. Or pick up the phone and call 01472 315561. Until tomorrow, goodbye.